Alyse November. My son Josh has type 1 diabetes, and as a mom, thought it would be great to conduct some live interviews with other moms to help people understand a little bit more about type 1 diabetes. I'm here also representing JDRF, and we're doing these shoots of this mom-to-mom kind of talk through JDRF. So I'm here with Karen Harwood, and Karen, you have a son with type 1 diabetes.
Yep, I have a 15-year-old son, Joshua, also, and he was diagnosed when he was 8 years old. He was in 3rd grade, I believe, and it was in the spring, and didn't really know what was going on, just knew something wasn't right. He didn't have an appetite, was very sleepy, so my husband brought him to the doctor's office, and he pretty much was diagnosed in the office and then went to the hospital. And that's when our lives changed.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Okay, so once he was diagnosed and you were sent home, what was your experience with bringing home a new diabetic? And, I know when I did, we came home with needles and, all these prescriptions, and it's like, oh my God, what now?
It was very overwhelming, and I distinctly remember going to the supermarket for the first time. My husband and I went together. Our son was still in the hospital, and we said, oh, well, we better get the house ready for when Josh comes home. And I just remember being in the market and having no idea what to buy, having no idea what was right, no idea what was wrong. How do we, it was like learning a whole new life that I didn't know before, and it was very scary. But I guess we bought what we needed to buy. I don't even remember what we bought, but I just remember that experience going to the market for the first time and just being so overwhelmed with, what happens? How does he make decisions about what to eat, and how do we think through every meal? Like, it just that was, I would say, one of the most overwhelming things. And then we came home and we figured it out, and now it's like second nature. Now you don't even really have to think about it.
Right, you can look at a plate of food and be like, 30 carbs.
Yeah,
yep.
He knows what he needs to do. He's 15, and now I do very little. And he makes most of his choices on his own, and I have to trust him to make the right choices. And I still hover quite a bit, where to the point where he probably wishes I didn't, but he has a lot of freedom. He gets to he does overnights. He spends a lot of time with friends when he's not with me, and and he's got his supplies with him, and he does what he needs to do. How about you, Josh?
So yeah, so what do you think about, because we're in the same boat, because my Josh is now 17,
Yeah.
and so teenagers and diabetes.
Yeah.
And, so they want to eat pizza. He comes home, and I mean, I don't know what this kid eats, but it's his plate of food. Oh my God, he can make a Nutella sandwich with like one piece of bread, Nutella. I don't know, he puts bologna on it, it's gross, and then another piece of bread, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh my God, that's so many carbs.
That's
like
the worst possible thing you could be eating right now.
Teenagers, and so when you were talking about hovering, and being on him, how do I struggle with it as a parent. How do you manage it?
It's I try to pick my battles, and I feel like I pick my battles, but I'm sure if you asked him, he would probably say, he says to me, if you let me do this on my own, I'll figure it out. He's like, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'll figure it out. And because he says in a few years, he said, I'm going to be figuring this out all on my own. You are not going to be here to help me. And but it's really hard to let go, because you want to make sure they're safe. You want to make sure they're healthy. And you want to make sure they're making good choices. He's been fortunate that he's been very active athletically, and that's given him a lot of freedom. I find that when you're physically active, you can be a little more flexible with your food choices. medications work better, your body works better. However, when you're not active, you really do lose some of that freedom. It's a balance between activity, the choices that you make with food, taking your medication as prescribed. It's a lot to juggle, especially as a 15-year-old, where it's the last thing you want to think about. You just want to be with friends. You just want to hang out and have fun and not worry about your supplies and checking your sugar. So it's, I feel like it's kind of a daily struggle finding that balance. But I do think he does like that I have his back, especially when he's not paying attention as much as it's hard for him to admit it.
Yeah, it's a separation process, I
Yeah.
think, for them. So normal, typical way children go through separation,
Yeah.
a separation
Yeah.
process as they're getting older,
Yeah.
knowing that they're going to fly the nest. And I think for our type 1 diabetics, it's even harder.
Yeah.
Josh has expressed this is an anxiety-producing
Yeah.
disease.
Yeah.
Not knowing, like you
Yeah.
said, we try to balance it. So he exercises one day, but the next day he doesn't.
Yeah.
So the day he exercises, he's dropping all day. The day he doesn't, he's high.
Yeah.
So how do you find that balance?
Yeah.
And then, like we said, helping them to translate it to, I'm going to be on my own, and I
Yeah.
need to figure out how to do this. So how do we as parents
Yeah.
pull back?
Yeah.
And then also, allow them to be as independent as they can.
It's a balancing act. But it's a daily kind of, I think you really have to figure it out day by day. It's, because the disease changes day by day. So it's not like something you can figure out and then you've got it under. It's like a daily thing that kind of, and you really have to learn how to be flexible. And, like my husband said when he was about 9 or, he said it feels like a Super Ball. Like, when you bounce a Super Ball, like, you don't know where it's going. It bounces here, it bounces there, it bounces on the wall, it bounces on the ceiling, and that's what it feels like. It feels like this Super Ball, kind of like, and you're constantly trying to catch it, and you just don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
So, you do your best, and you try to do what you need to do to kind of figure out where it's going to go, but you really have to kind of let go of it to some degree, and kind of accept that it is like this bouncing Super Ball that you're trying to kind of catch. So
That's wonderful.
I thought it was a good analogy.
I think
never
that's so
forgot it.
important for other parents to recognize is, just when you think you got it under control, you really don't. And I think it's just about being flexible.
Yeah.
As a parent, as a person with it, to know that there are going to be highs and lows, even when you try your hardest
Yeah.
to stay in good control,
Yeah.
that sometimes
Yeah.
you just can't. And
Yeah.
you just have to kind of go with it and figure out where you're at that moment.
Yeah. We'll think we have everything under control. We're having good days. He's going to school. He's not missing classes, not going to the nurse. And then we'll get hit with, he'll wake up, his sugar's 400, his insulin ran out in the middle of the night, he didn't hear a beeping. His day is shot. Like, and it can be a day where you have tests. It can be a day where you have tryouts. It can be, so you have to kind of, those I think are the hardest days, where you think you've got it kind of under control, you've got a good routine, you've got it all together, and then one little thing that is really not anybody's fault can just kind of make it a new challenge, and you have to kind of just be flexible and kind of say, all right, this is in the past, we got to move forward and focus on today and take a deep breath and start new.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's a lot of those days, but I think it's definitely given him a strength that he didn't have before. He's very strong and adult-like in many ways, and unfortunately, I think when you're faced with illness, either you have an illness or a loved one has an illness when you're young, it does take a little bit of your innocence and childhood away, but in some ways it makes you very strong in another way and very compassionate and empathetic, to other people. And I think there's some qualities that he has that, and our family has, that we wouldn't have had we not gone through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's changed him. It's made him
Different.
a different person.
Different. I agree.
And there's good qualities about that. So.
Mm-hmm. I know it was so challenging when Josh was first diagnosed, my Josh, and as you've already mentioned, it was really challenging when your Josh was diagnosed. And I know from time to time through JDRF, we get asked to mentor parents who are newly diagnosed, because parents are diagnosed just as much as the kids are. And how, what has your experience been with speaking to a mom or a parent, a dad, and we don't want to leave them out, but with a child who has been newly diagnosed with T1D?
I mean, I would say one thing I would say is that everybody kind of figures out their natural place. Everybody's a little bit different, and I think it's a little overwhelming at first because you have doctors telling you to do things a certain way. You might have friends telling you to do things a certain way. When my son was newly diagnosed, I had a mom from our elementary school send me a video about how a young man was able to cure his diabetes by eating vegetables. So you have to really know that a lot of information is going to come at you, and I found that I didn't even want to believe the doctors, that I wanted to kind of go online and really do some research and see if there really was a way to manage this disease without insulin. I wanted to know, are there side effects from insulin? Are there any other options? Like I had a hard time kind of believing that this was something that was with us for life. You never go into a hospital expecting to walk out with a condition that is permanent. I really feel like it was such a shock going into the hospital and them saying, you're going to go home with your son, but this is not going away. And I fought that for a while. And so you really have to come to a place where you do your research, you hear all this information from other parents, all these other friends with well-meaning ideas of fried eating okra, and let me tell you, I mean, even apple cider vinegar will normalize your sugar. I mean, everything, you will hear everything under the sun, and you really have to kind of weed through that information and just really kind of try to find your comfortable place. But the reality is that your child is going to need insulin to survive, and you are going to have to kind of learn this new way of life, and it's not going to go away with eating vegetables only. It's not going to go away with eating okra or apple cider vinegar. There's definitely choices you can make with food that'll make things easier. There's definitely changes you can make with activity that'll make things easier. You can check your sugar more often and definitely keep your numbers more in range. But really where your family's at, it may be different than where another family's at. And if your A1C is higher at one point than another family's, it doesn't mean you're a bad mom or your kid's a bad kid. It's a daily journey, and everybody kind of is in different places, and it really is a long-term journey, and it's not something you figure out the first week, the first year, the first 2 years, the first 5 years. Like it is something that is really something you're constantly learning, and there is new technology. There are new insulins that are more efficient. So, I mean, my hope is that as we have more research, more tools, that it will be easier to manage. But I mean, when you compare it even to what people had to deal with 20 years ago, 40 years ago, our kids have it so much easier. They are able to really have a lot more freedom and ability to be a normal kid than it was even 20 years ago. So in some ways, I feel like we're very spoiled and have a lot easier than people did in the past. But it's nice to know, I think, that it's hopefully within their lifetime it'll even get easier for them to manage the challenges.
Mm-hmm. How, as a parent, did you manage your own anxiety of dealing with it? I learned after my first child that I do not do well if I don't get sleep. So when I was sent home with my son and instructed that we needed to check him at
2 a.m. every day, it was really an adjustment and something I had to kind of really think about and kind of play with and learn some flexibility, because my husband did not get up. He sleeps hard as a rock, and he cannot function at work if he gets up at 2 a.m. every day. So it really fell on me. At the time, I wasn't working as much, so it was on me to kind of do that 2 a.m. thing. And I realized after about a year that I was not going to function, and it was affecting me physically and emotionally to do every single night a 2 a.m. check. And so it's a conversation you have with your endocrinologist. Every endocrinologist is different, kind of how they work with patients and families and what they suggest is appropriate during the night. But I would say that was something that I had to really look at as far as how I emotionally felt during the day. You know, when you're up all night, it affects you emotionally and physically during the day. It's a tough balance. So I had to kind of say, okay, where do I make choices for my son's safety, and where do I make choices for my sanity? So, you know, we kind of find a balance, and we found what works. We kind of know how his body cycles, and there are days where I'm up all night, checking every couple hours, but there are nights where I am sleeping through the night because, you know, and again, that's something that's different for every family.
Yeah.
Different families find where they're comfortable. So
I get that. I wake up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom, as most of us do, and the thought crosses my mind of, should I go in and check him now?
Yeah.
And then I go back to bed, and then I feel guilty. And then I think, well, what if he dies? What if he doesn't wake up because I didn't go in there right now? And I typically get out of bed at that moment and go in there.
Yeah.
But this is...
No, I'll maybe I won't check him, but I'll go in, I'll look at him, I'll wait to see him move.
and then touch him, right?
Yeah, and then I'll say,
him.
and then I'll even say, "You okay?" And he'll be like, "I'm good." I'm like, "Your sugar's good?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm good." And then I'll go right to bed.
And Josh wears a sensor now, so I usually look at the sensor, but then sometimes like I start to go back to my room and I look at the sensor again and I say, okay, was it real? Was it live? You know, because sometimes it could be off. And sometimes I'll go back in and check them again.
Yeah.
You know, but I go through that in the morning. I used to go through that morning ritual where you touch him and make sure he's breathing. You know?
No.
And it's hard.
No, every day I go in and I look and I wait for him to move. And his bed creaks, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'll hear his bed creaking and I'll be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
good. He's all right. So, you know, I would say that, you know, when you talk about anxiety, that's probably when I have the most anxiety is, you know, when he goes to bed, you know, when we're getting up in the morning. You know, I used to be a lot more anxious when he played sports, but I feel like we've done a lot to kind of overcome some of those challenges. We've, you know, through trial and error, found kind of some routines that worked. I went to a conference a couple summers ago, Friends for Life, and there were so many different panelists that talked about sports, and I noticed that JDRF actually started a new program to help athletes. But it's really important to kind of talk to different people, you know, kind of explore, is this diabetes related? Is this not diabetes related? Because not everything is diabetes related. So, you know, adrenaline can make your sugar spike. Heat can make your sugar spike. You know, so many different factors play into it. But if you pay attention and you kind of look for trends, you can kind of figure out some solutions. And so, like, sports used to make me very anxious. I feel a lot more confident, and he feels a lot more confident. You know, and he would do a tryout where they have to run 2 miles, and we all know that if you don't know that you're going to run 2 miles, and all of a sudden the coach says you're running 2 miles, and your supplies are back in the locker room, you have no idea where your numbers are, you don't have any Gatorade, like, it can be very. And these are things when you're younger, your kids are younger, you can control a lot easier, but when they're in high school and they're on campus, and, you know, it's scary. But
right. How comfortable is your Josh talking about it? Because I know my Josh just signed up for Kung Fu, And so when we were there with the sensei,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what they're called, but that person who was instructing him, you know, I said, this is something you need to know.
Yeah.
That my son
Yeah.
has this, and he needs to keep his supplies near him.
Yeah.
And when you said, you just caused me a bit of anxiety, because when you told me that Josh's supplies are back in the locker room,
Yeah.
like that's a no-no. My son carries it. Josh carries his stuff no matter where he is on his back, and yes, he might be halfway around the track,
Yeah.
and he's not carrying it with him
Yeah.
around the track, but it's at the track. It's there.
I would say typically it's in his bag and with him within 50 feet.
Okay.
The locker room
Mhm.
is right next to
Okay.
I mean, you know Boca High.
Yeah.
They're right there.
Mhm.
So ideally, you know, I will say to him, you need to keep your supplies as close as possible, and he'll say, yes, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And it's also making sure, as I think, you know, a team,
Yeah.
because Josh doesn't, you know, he doesn't want to bother anybody with it.
Yeah.
And he almost just wants to kind of blend
Yeah.
in, although
But they all
everybody
do.
knows
Yeah.
he has type 1, and all of his friends and teachers
Yeah.
and everybody are super supportive, but he almost doesn't want to make a big thing of it.
Yeah.
So sometimes he'll risk his own
Yeah.
health because it's like, oh, you know, I didn't want to worry them at
Yeah.
that moment, or I didn't want to go get
Yeah.
it.
No, he doesn't want to be a pain. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
No.
Just want to kind of be,
He
as you
showed-
said before, normal.
Yeah, he shared this adorable story with me. He's made a lot of new friends this year, which, you know, and he's made a lot of nice, good friends, which, you know, as a parent, even if your friend is, your child's diabetic or not diabetic, you worry about the friends they make and who they choose to hang out with and what they're doing when they're out. And he's made some really good friends, and he shared with me he went to this kid's house, and somehow it came up that he was diabetic, and the kid pulled him aside and said, oh, one of my best friends is diabetic. If you need anything, if you need any snacks, we've got stuff over here. And he shared with me, it was like so nice to have a peer kind of acknowledge what he may need and help him feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is something I worry about if he goes to a kid's house. What if they don't have any snacks? What if he doesn't feel comfortable asking for a Gatorade or, you know, something sugary? You know, but, and that's, it's scary, but fortunately he's been fortunate to be with kids that he's been comfortable with, but he definitely is more on the side of kind of keeping it quiet. He showed me just the other
I
day.
think you're Josh, yeah.
He was in class and he was beeping, and you know, one of his devices were beeping, and this girl said, oh, you're the diabetic. She said, my sister's diabetic, and I've been hearing this beeping all year, and I didn't know who it was. And he's like, and she's really cute, but she's a junior. So, you know,
it's a chick magnet.
and maybe, yeah. So you know, but yeah, he definitely, you know, will try to kind of be on the down low,
Mhm.
and but he has gotten better with keeping stuff with him, and maybe part of that is that I'm not around, and he knows he's going to have this stuff with him. I'm not there, you know, at every practice, which I would like to be, but you know, it's a tough balance.
You know, but you brought up something really important, I think, for parents and moms to know is it's not something we need to hide. And I think that if parents, if we portray, you know, that we're okay with it, as opposed to, oh, come on, let's go hide and text, let's not let anybody know, then that's what how your children will respond as well. And it's something that we need to just be out there and open with. I mean, I get it, you know, in restaurants it might not be appropriate to have blood spurting all over the place, but we do it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, and we do it out there, and it's nothing to hide.
Yeah.
It's nothing to be embarrassed
Right.
about. It's nothing to be ashamed about. And it's just part of who you are.
Yeah.
And why not present that to the world with confidence and saying, this is just me. I need to test before I run.
Yeah.
I might need to stop and take a juice.
Yeah.
I might need to stop totally if I don't feel good. I might not show up for a practice because my blood sugar is high. But that's me.
Yeah.
That's Josh.
Yeah.
That's who I am. And to be confident with that. So I think one message that you and I could spread to parents is be confident with it.
Yeah.
Don't hold back and don't feel like you need to, you know, be timid about it. and be embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And help your child to feel confident with it too, so they could get the help
Yeah.
or the support or whatever it is whenever they need
And
it.
check when they need to check. And
Check it. Do what you do. You know,
Yeah.
don't just because the teacher says run the next mile.
Yeah.
You need to be your child needs to be a good advocate
Yeah.
for themselves and be able to say, Coach, I will, but first I need
Yeah.
to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And if we can empower our children by empowering ourselves to be able to do that and be able to speak up, I think that's just a
Yeah.
wonderful message that we could send out to parents as
I
well.
agree.
Yeah. So I'd like to really thank you for being here and sharing your experiences with type 1, being the parent and mom of a child with type 1. And, you know, we're just mamas on a mission,
Yeah.
trying to spread a message and trying to help other parents out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Alyse November and Karen
Karen
Harwood signing off.